A new security deal for the US, UK, and Australia. Under it, Australia acquires nuclear-powered submarines. All this seemingly to counter communist China. The European Union boosts efforts to rival the influence Beijing has gained through its Belt and Road Initiative. International voices calling to support Taiwan are getting louder as more push to help defend the island. At the same time, Beijing is seeking a new national image. Officials are even trying to create so-called new forms of human civilization. The star of Marvel's latest movie is facing backlash from China. That's after he spoke publicly about his family history. And stock prices for casino companies operating in Macau take a plunge. This after Beijing kicked off a regulatory rule in the world's biggest gambling hub. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The United States, Britain, and Australia on Wednesday announced a new security partnership for the Indo-Pacific. This will involve helping Australia acquire nuclear-powered submarines.
On Wednesday, the U.S., Britain, and Australia announced the initiative dubbed AUKUS. The leaders say it aims to preserve peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific. None of them mentioned China, but Beijing's influence over the region is growing.
Today, we're taking another historic step to deepen and formalize cooperation among all three of our nations, because we all recognize the imperative of ensuring peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific over the long term.
The first collaboration will be to develop nuclear-powered submarines for the Australian Navy. Leaders stressed the submarines will be powered by nuclear reactors, not armed with nuclear weapons, and would allow the Australian Navy to operate more quietly for longer periods and provide deterrence across the Indo-Pacific.
The future of the Indo-Pacific will impact all our futures. To meet these challenges, to help deliver the security and stability our region needs, we must now take our partnership to a new level. But let me be clear. Australia is not seeking to acquire nuclear weapons or establish a civil nuclear capability. And we will continue to meet all our nuclear non-proliferation obligations.
Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson called it a momentous decision for Australia to acquire the technology. He said it would make the world safer. Senior Biden administration officials who briefed the reporters ahead of the announcement said the move was not aimed at countering Beijing. However, Washington and its allies have been looking for new ways to push back against Beijing's growing power and influence. China's Washington embassy reacted strongly against the new partnership.
Aside from the nuclear submarine fleet, the U.S. would also give Australia another powerful weapon, a U.S. Tomahawk cruise missile. The missile has a range of over 1,000 miles and would improve Australia's long-strike capability. Next, we turn to countries' reactions to the new pact. First off, an angry France. The new pact means France is losing a $40 billion deal. In 2016, Australia went to the French shipbuilder for a fleet of diesel-electric submarines. But the new pact would get Australia nuclear-powered submarines, and they're quieter, faster, and can stay underwater longer. So Australia canceled its deal with France. France's foreign minister said Australia's move is a stab in the back, adding, "We had established a trusting relationship with Australia, and this trust was betrayed." As for the European Union, its top diplomat says he understands France's disappointment and that the EU wasn't consulted on the security pact beforehand.
We were stakeholders, and this forces us once again. And it's a good opportunity to remind ourselves, to reflect on the need to make the issue of European strategic autonomy a priority. This shows that we must survive on our own.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
As for the UK, getting Australia nuclear-powered submarines is just the start of the new partnership.
Now that we have created AUKUS, we expect to accelerate the development of other advanced defence systems, including in cyber, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and undersea capabilities.
As for Australia's closest neighbour, New Zealand, it says the new fleet of submarines must stay out of New Zealand's waters.
Our legislation means that nothing that is wholly or fully powered, no vessel that is wholly or fully, partially or fully powered by nuclear energy is able to enter into our internal waters. So that is in fact a position that has been held across parties for a long period of time.
Up north, Japan is showing its support of the deal. Japan's chief cabinet secretary says the pact is crucial for peace and security in the Indo-Pacific region.
We would like to continue working closely with our allies and partners, countries that have the same goals.
The European Union is playing a more active role in the global affairs to rival Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced on Tuesday a project called Global Gateway. She said the EU needs to become a more active global player in this era of hyper-competitiveness. Von der Leyen didn't hide her focus on China.
We're pretty good at financing roads. But it does not make any sense for Europe if we build a perfect road between a copper mine that is Chinese owned and a harbor that is Chinese owned.
To rival China, the EU plans to spend more on international projects, including infrastructure. This is a countermeasure against Beijing's political and economic influence. Von der Leyen added, in the Indo-Pacific region, autocratic regimes are trying to expand their influence, so Europe needs to be more active in this region. European countries are improving their relations with Taiwan. They're urging more action on bilateral trade agreements and deepening cooperation on science, technology, and healthcare.
The European Parliament adopted a new EU-China strategy on Thursday. The report labels China an economic competitor and systemic rival. Meanwhile, members call on the EU to progress an investment agreement with Taiwan. The report also urges the Commission to facilitate Taiwan's full participation as an observer in the global arena, including the activities of the World Health Organization, the International Civil Aviation Organization, and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. 2 days earlier, the Swiss lower house of parliament voted overwhelmingly to pass a motion to improve ties with Taiwan. Swiss National Councillor Nicholas Walder says, Taiwan is a partner state with which we share democracy, respect for human rights, and the liberal economic order. Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs welcomed the motion. Switzerland-based Taiwan author Min Ruyen says, Taiwan can help Switzerland better understand the Chinese Communist Party's tactics of infiltration. She says Taiwan needs to emphasize that China and the Chinese Communist Party should be viewed separately. The Chinese Communist regime is not a normal political force. It's sick. Switzerland and other democracies cannot view the CCP as normal. If so, they will definitely fail, because the CCP's sense of values and ways of doing things are different. She added Western countries have been appeasing China for too long, and that they must correct course or die at the hands of the Communist Party.
Now we look to Washington. The U.S. is supporting Lithuania for standing up against Beijing's pressure.
We stand together for collective defense and security. We stand against economic coercion, including that being exerted by China, and we stand strongly for democracy.
Blinken's comment comes as Lithuania has been facing increasing pressure from Beijing. Earlier, Lithuania became the first European country to allow Taiwan to open an office under its own name. The move is unusual because other countries only allow Taiwan to open offices as Taipei instead of Taiwan. This is because the Chinese regime claims Taiwan as part of mainland China, and any effort to strengthen ties with Taiwan could upset Beijing. And Beijing's reaction was strong. It expelled Lithuania's envoy and recalled its own ambassador. Beijing also halted freight train services to Lithuania, and it stopped issuing food export permits to Lithuanian producers. Taiwan continues boosting its military spending. The island country proposed on Thursday extra defense spending of about $9 billion over the next 5 years. This money will be used in part on new missiles and warships. Taiwan warned of an urgent need to upgrade weapons under what they called a severe threat from China.
In response to the current enemy threat and the changing regional situation, the National Army must quickly improve its combat power.
The new arms will all be made domestically in Taiwan, but the U.S. will likely remain a provider for important parts and technology. The new money comes on top of planned military spending of $17 billion for 2022. The proposal will need to be approved by Parliament, and it's expected to pass smoothly, backed by the ruling party's large majority. Taiwan is in the middle of its annual military drills on Wednesday. Taiwan's army simulated fending off an invasion, firing artillery out to sea. It seems China is mulling how to build a new image for itself on the global stage. A commentary lays out what China needs to do and how to go about it. The article was first published on Guangming Daily, an official newspaper targeting Chinese intellectuals. The outlet is under the direct control of the Chinese Communist Party's Central Committee. The article was widely republished by other official CCP news outlets. It says China's national image should be that of a great socialist country that's, quote, tied with the great party image of the Chinese Communist Party. The article lists three aspects of this image. One is the idea that socialism is in the country's genes. It quotes Xi Jinping saying socialism with Chinese characteristics creates new forms of human civilization. The second aspect is the concept that the country is responsible in the international arena. This, according to the article, includes building a community of health and wellness for all humanity. The last point emphasizes passing on its culture. It says China should insist on its leading role in shaping the future, adding that, quote, its image of a civilized power is recognized by more and more countries. The commentary piece then goes on to explain how to execute these goals. Top of the list is through the media, public relations, and global forums. Then it restates that the CCP's image should reflect China's image. Finally, the article advises opposing anything that, according to the author, demonizes China's image, but it doesn't give the specifics. A Marvel movie star is facing backlash from Chinese netizens. That's after he criticized China. He said that the Asian nation is a third world country and that people were starving to death there just decades ago. NTD's Don Ma has more.
The star of Marvel's newest movie, Shang-Chi, is facing backlash from Chinese netizens. It's after a video of him criticizing China resurfaced recently. Now the movie may not even see a release in China. The resurfaced video is from 2017. It's an interview with the Marvel star Simu Liu and Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, or CBC. In it, Liu said that his parents, who grew up in China, will tell him stories of people starving to death, and he described China as a third world country. Liu's parents are close to 60 years old, so they experienced CCP leader Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution firsthand, and his grandparents lived through China's Great Famine. Together, these two events caused tens of millions of deaths in China. Here's a clip of the interview.
You know, when I was young, my parents would tell me these stories about growing up in communist China, where you had people dying of starvation, and they lived in the third world. And they thought of Canada as this pipe dream, as this place where they could go to be free and to...
This clip has recently shown up on many Chinese social media websites. On Weibo, it has close to 20,000 views, and many Chinese netizens are criticizing him. Some call him a foreigner, saying he's not Chinese. One rhetorically asked, "You still want to make money from us after saying China's a poor third world country that can't afford to eat?" CBC has since deleted the interview from their website in light of the backlash. Now doubts are rising on whether the Marvel movie will get a China release. China's propaganda department oversees film, and they have boycotted movies in the past when actors or directors criticized China. This was the case with Oscar winner director Chloe Zhao's movie Nomadland. Her movie was originally scheduled to release in April this year, but the release date has since been removed by Chinese authorities. It was after a comment resurfaced of Zhao criticizing China, saying there were lies everywhere in the country. Simu Liu was born in China. He immigrated to Canada at the age of 5. Don Ma, NTD News.
And in sports, Chinese state-run media are praising an 18-year-old British girl who just won the U.S. Open. Meet Emma Raducanu. Some Chinese media outlets even dubbed her a young player of Chinese origin. Raducanu was born in Canada to a Chinese mother and Romanian father. She moved to Britain when she was 2. After winning the title, Raducanu delivered a message in Mandarin to her Chinese fans.
大家好，我想说谢谢。我希望你喜欢看我的网球，我现在特别开心，但是我们赢了，姐姐我爱你。
Sports marketing experts predict that Raducanu's U.S. Open victory could earn her hundreds of millions of dollars in the years to come. Experts say she could help Chinese brands access overseas markets, or international brands access the Chinese market, all of which would make big money. Stocks in U.S. and other casino companies operating in the Chinese city Macau shed as much as a third of their value on Wednesday. This after Beijing kicked off a regulatory overhaul in the world's biggest gambling hub. The new rules could see Chinese Communist Party officials supervising casino companies there.
Macau's casinos lost around $14 billion in value on Wednesday amid a sweeping regulatory overhaul. The revamp could see officials supervising companies in the world's largest gambling hub. With Macau's lucrative casino licenses up for rebidding next year, a government proposal to revise the city's gaming law spooked the Hong Kong market, with operator stocks tumbling by as much as a third. Wynn Macau led the plunge, falling as much as 34% to a record low, followed by a 28% tumble for Sands China. Peers MGM China, Galaxy Entertainment, SJM and Melco Entertainment all fell heavily, bringing the drop to $14 billion. Beijing, which is increasingly wary of Macau's reliance on gambling, has not yet indicated how the license rebidding process will be judged. Macau's Secretary for Economy and Finance, Li Wainong, announced late Tuesday a 45-day consultation on the gambling industry to begin the following day. He said there were still some deficiencies in industry supervision. At a press briefing, Li detailed 9 areas for the consultation, including the number of licenses to be given, increased regulation, and protecting employee welfare. Government representatives may also be brought in to supervise day-to-day operations at the casinos. Discussions over the future of Macau's licenses comes amid increasingly rocky US-China relations, leaving some investors fearing that US-based casino operators may not fare as well as local players.
Gambling is the heart of Macau's economy and is the only place it's legal in China. Macau is not only the world's biggest gambling hub, but also the biggest breeding ground for money laundering. For years, Beijing has been pouring resources into combating capital outflow, and this is money that left China partly through money laundering. Customs officers in Pittsburgh have seized 2 shipments of fake COVID-19 vaccination cards from China. They noticed the cards' low-quality printing. They say the cards were on their way to somebody in Pennsylvania. The first shipment contained 20 cards and was intercepted at the end of August. The second, involving 50 of them, was found at the beginning of September. The Customs and Border Protection Port Director in Pittsburgh called the documents a threat to the economy and the nation and said those who sell them are a threat along with the disease itself. Customs officials say they've seized a total of 6,000 fake COVID-19 vaccination cards in multiple states to date. TikTok's lead data privacy regulator in the European Union has opened 2 probes into the Chinese-owned short video platform. They are related to the processing of children's personal data and the transfers of personal data to China. NTD's Faye Quarter has more.
TikTok faces 2 new investigations in the EU. The first probe focuses on how TikTok processes children's personal data. The second one relates to TikTok's transfer of personal data to China and whether its data transfer to non-EU countries complies with the bloc's data privacy law. TikTok could face a fine up to 4% of its global revenue from Ireland's Data Protection Commission, which is the company's main regulator in the EU. Owned by China's ByteDance, TikTok has grown rapidly around the world, particularly among teenagers. But it faces criticism that it has failed to protect children from hidden advertising and inappropriate content. Back in August, TikTok announced stricter privacy controls for teenagers, seeking to address those concerns. But a recent in-depth report from the Wall Street Journal shows how its algorithm could show minors a constant stream of sex and drug videos. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
A former top lawmaker in the UK wants an investigation into ties between a Cambridge University research centre and Chinese tech company Huawei. NTD's Patrick Hayden in London has the details.
The UK's former Conservative leader, Sir Ian Duncan Smith, is calling on the UK to investigate Cambridge University's links to Chinese tech giant Huawei. Huawei is accused of infiltrating one of the university's research centres. Smith says the universities are far too dependent on Chinese money, with Cambridge being one of the worst offenders. The Times of London reported Monday that the chief representative and 3 out of the 4 directors at the Cambridge Centre for Chinese Management have ties to Huawei. The chief representative, Yanping Hu, was removed from the centre's website following inquiries from the newspaper. An archive page from a month ago shows Hu as one of its people. The Chinese version of the page says that Hu is the CEO of Huawei, affiliated Huaying Management, which along with Huawei is a US-sanctioned company due to national security concerns. NGO Hong Kong Watch co-founder Johnny Patterson said it looks as if the research centre has been infiltrated by Huawei and the university should definitely investigate it. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Lecturers are concerned that Chinese students attending UK universities remotely are risking legal consequences. British newspaper The Times reports Chinese spies might be able to monitor their discussions in online classrooms for censored political content. Chinese students who cannot attend classes in the UK due to the pandemic restrictions must attend remotely. At least 5 British universities have their Chinese students log in via servers based in China. They are hosted by Chinese company Alibaba with ties to the Chinese Communist regime. Edinburgh University is one such university. Its director of the Institute for Academic Development says students or staff could put themselves at risk by sharing their views on some topics. The Association for Asian Studies fears its students could even end up in jail. At least 3 people are dead and 100 injured after a magnitude 6.0 earthquake struck a South China province. Chinese state media CCTV says the shallow quake hit Sichuan province early Thursday morning. According to the official Xinhua news agency, the earthquake affected over 120,000 people. More than 1,400 houses collapsed and over 30,000 more were damaged. Rescue work is underway. The earthquake triggered a level 2 response. That's the second highest in China's 4-tier emergency response system. The quake struck at a depth of 6 miles in Luxian County. The epicenter is just about 75 miles away from a mega city that's home to some 30 million people. Western China is regularly hit by earthquakes. A magnitude 7.9 quake in May 2008 killed nearly 90,000 people in the same province, many of whom died in collapsed schools and other poorly constructed buildings. And that's all for today's China in Focus. But before you go, we have an announcement. If you're interested in a short weekly summary of what's really going on in China and some behind-the-scenes content of what we're up to, make sure you subscribe to our China in Focus newsletter. You can find the link to sign up in the description box down below. Every Friday morning, the latest will land in your inbox. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.